Alright, so this is a movie review. The movie's called Don John. It's about, like, in my eyes, it's mainly revolved around like porn addiction. And the people that are interested in watching this movie, maybe you might not want to see this video because there might be some spoilers and things like that. But the people that already have seen the movie, or they don't mind what I had to say about the movie, continue on to watch what I had to say. Give a movie review about it, and just speaking about pornography in general and its effect on society, on women and on men. We live in a society where it's changing so quickly, and there's this modern technology has really changed the relations we have with human beings on a drastic level. Not just in regards to pornography, but just the internet in general. The use of Facebook, for example, has changed the way that we communicate with people. The use of YouTube, and of course pornography, like how people are able to share information, no matter it be photographs and videos or writings, at such a quick pace, at a quick manner, all across the world. And it's changing our relationships dynamically. This movie is about a man who pretty much he's like a player. He's a ladies' man. He could basically sleep with whatever woman he wants to sleep with. He's going to the club and he's like sleeping with all these different ladies. But every time he uses protection, and there's really no intimacy, no love between him and the woman. It's just like usually a one-night stand, just using the woman for sex. But even while he's doing this, even though he could get women easily, he still enjoys pornography more than having actual sex with women. He actually enjoys pornography more, and he watches pornography, quite often, and he would masturbate all the time, and he'd actually enjoy that more. But then he meets this woman that he falls in love with, and then, she changes his life. She's basically getting him to go to school and getting him to do all these different things that he normally wouldn't do for a regular lady. So he ends up like doing all these things, changing himself to kind of meet up to the expectations of this woman. And she doesn't know about his porn addiction, because he's pretty much addicted, because he just can't stop watching it. But she finds out about his addiction. Well, she didn't really find out about his addiction. She caught him watching porn, and she got really upset, and she threatened to leave him. But then he lied about it and said that this is not something that he cares for and all this other stuff, and basically tried to basically convinced her that this is a one-time thing. So basically throughout the whole movie, he's trying to cope with his addiction while trying to hide it away from his girlfriend. All right, but there's an interesting point in the movie which wasn't really highlighted as much as I think it should have. But basically, the woman was not interested in porn, but she loved watching like Hollywood movies. And in these Hollywood movies, they would have like a romantic, like fantasy, like fantasy of how a relationship should be, like basically like how a woman should be treated, and giving them ideas of how they should be treated, and how a relationship should be, and this whole fairy tale happy ending type of garbage that you see in all these romantic movies. So she basically ends up getting conditioned by the Hollywood movies to have these high expectations for men, and expect that the man should be like bowing down to their every command. But then when it comes to the men, they don't care about the Hollywood movies, but they're addicted to the porn, and then they have high expectations for the woman to be able to like perform sexually at a high level that these porn stars are able to perform in. So basically the men have the unrealistic expectations towards the woman of how they should be in bed, and then the women have the unrealistic expectations for the men of how they should be treated within a relationship. So basically this was all going down, and then she catches him, she catches she searches through his computer and then finds like a history, his browsing history, and finds out that he's watching porn like all the time. She ends up getting really pissed off and breaks up with him completely. And then basically he's trying to cope with all this, and he meets an older lady, and this is kind of weird, but he meets a lady that's like over 20 years older than him, and he starts having sex with her. And he ends up realizing that the sex with her was more meaningful than any of the sex he ever had with other ladies, simply because he was more into the moment. The older lady kind of taught him in a way to kind of grow up and to kind of basically in a way kind of experience this thing that we call meditation. They didn't say it was meditation in the movie, but it basically was meditation. He was basically learning to be in the moment while he's having sex, opposed to like constantly thinking about pornographic scenes or whatever the case may be. Instead of like using the woman as a sex object, you know, he was learning to kind of connect with the woman on a human level, on an intimate level, where he's opening up his heart to her and his body to her, while she's opening up her body and her heart to him, where they're having sex more based on love opposed to just straight lust. And then he started to experience the beauty of that and started to draw away from the pornography, because he actually enjoyed the real like moment of sex opposed to just images on a computer. So the movie kind of ended at him having this kind of realization that, you know, to basically learn to be in meditation while you're having sex, and that is basically like the cure to his addiction to pornography. Okay, so that's the whole premise that I got from the movie. Now, I think that there's a lot of truth to the movie, and that's why I like the movie. I mean, it was like, it's basically highlighting like very taboo subjects, which is about sex and pornography, and people don't really want to talk about these sort of things. But I think the movie was highlighting a lot of things that every single couple goes through. Like, they have to go through it. I mean, because we live in a society that has so much pornography, you know, all over the internet, that you can't get away from it no matter how much you try. As a man, you know, you're gonna be viewing pornography. I mean, it's just something you cannot avoid. It's there. And as long as you're sexually active, you're gonna be drawn to this pornography. And this poses to be a challenge for all relationships, because once you engage in a relationship, the woman ends up becoming extremely insecure when she finds out and knows about your basically your interest and desire towards pornography. It puts her at a position where she feels very insecure, and this creates a lot of arguments, and it just leads to a lot of tension and arguments, and I'd say one of the main causes for a lot of breakups, and one of the main causes for a lot of divorces. And it's a very tough thing to deal with, because you look at the woman and what's expected of them. It's like men aren't really willing to wait for women anymore. I mean, it's not even it's even hard to imagine a man that would date a woman for even a month without expecting to have sex with her within that month. I mean, men have like these expectations that the woman should be, you know, giving out the sex, you know, pretty quickly. You know, like, you don't really would ever imagine a couple that would stay together, that would save each other until marriage. In this modern society that we live in, it's just not the case. I mean, people are having one-night stands. People are having sex a week after meeting each other, 2 weeks after them meeting each other. I mean, they're having sex very quickly. So they're expecting the woman to give out the sex very quickly. You know, and it's not even something that we practice anymore, where a couple dates for like 5 years without having sex, and then they get married and then they have sex. That's just something that doesn't really happen anymore. You know, and pornography puts a lot of high expectations onto women. Like, even men that are very ugly expect to be with women that are like super gorgeous, and that's mainly because of pornography. It's like men are so conditioned to have to be only attracted to beautiful women that are like perfect face, perfect hips, perfect bust line, perfect hips, perfect everything. You know, like not fat, not obese. I mean, just women. Every single man out there is conditioned to want like a woman that is like a supermodel, because they watch so much porn. You know, they're basically like lining up hundreds of girls, if not thousands of girls, on the computer, choosing which girl that they want to masturbate to, and they're choosing like the perfect girl. You know, and basically they want perfection when it comes to the physical, like how a woman is, like physically. They want her to be physically perfect, and that's a very unrealistic expectation for real women out there. I mean, because these women that are on the computer screens is just digital images, and these are things that are captured for that specific moment. It's not something that lasts. Like, it's not something that is living and breathing. So a woman essentially can just put on a lot of makeup and make sure that she looks really good for one porn scene, you know. But a woman to keep that high standard of like looking the way that she looks with all that makeup and making her body look perfect, it cannot happen on a day-to-day basis, because it's just not natural, you know, for a woman to just look perfect at all times, you know. But men, because they keep watching these images of perfection, they are conditioned their brains to expect women to be physically perfect, you know. And for these women to try to meet up to these expectations, it's just very unreasonable, you know. And it's sad that the women are going through this, but it's it's how it's how this media has affected the population, you know, the male population. It's this how it's affected the men, because they constantly watch all this stuff and they expect things to be perfect. So it's almost like, you know, you know, conditioning your brain to think in this manner into things that are not realistic. You know, it's like watching, you know, it's like, you know, it's like expecting, like constantly watching something that's, you know, not real, and then when it comes to reality, you're not satisfied with the reality anymore. You know what I mean? Because reality, I mean, there's like, there's sexually transmitted diseases you gotta worry about. There's like unwanted pregnancies you gotta worry about. Women go through the period and all that other stuff, and it's not like always like ready and perfect looking. It's not. It doesn't always smell the best. I mean, it's just like the reality is different than what they show you on in those videos. You know, and so that's the sad thing that I see that's going on, and how, if that could be fixed, I don't know if it really can. It'd be very, I don't know if it can, because something like pornography is not really regulated. I mean, because like everybody has access to porn. It's like, as long as you have access to the internet, you have access to porn, and even children and teenagers have access to porn. It's like something that's not regulated. Like, anybody could get access to it, so people can get so addicted to it, and then you like, they won't stop. The only way that they could stop is out of their own effort and their own willpower. Like, there's nobody there to stop them from basically feeding into this sort of addiction. And it's just kind of like, this is the world that we live in, you know. And I don't see it changing, You know, like it's something where the men are just conditioned. They are conditioned to basically have these high physical expectations for women, and I don't see that it's gonna change. You know, and it may just lead to a world where there's just a breakdown between the relations of men and women, like real relations, and men just get sexually satisfied from machines, from pornography, and through like pussy pockets and machines, like masturbation devices. It's almost like leading towards that, where you could have men that would rather watch porn and use a masturbation device. They'd rather do that than to be with a real woman, because a real woman is not going to be able to live up to the perfection that they expect. You know, they essentially would rather have an image of a beautiful woman, a cartoon image of a beautiful woman, than to have a real woman that's out of shape, obese, or just not that great looking, or smells bad. You know, it seems like that's kind of the world that we're leading towards. And it's something that it's becoming a reality. It's kind of like the difference between organic food, which may not look the best, but it's natural, and then like genetically modified food, like where it's like they make the strawberry look like it's perfect, but it's not like a real strawberry. It's something that's been, you know, manipulated through some type of science or technology. You know, it's like the difference between a regular chicken and then a chicken injected with steroids, which becomes like 3 times its size. Um, you know, it's the difference between like real food that's like fresh and then like canned food. You know, it's like we're living in a world where people are pretty much almost being like, they almost starting to prefer the false over the reality. That's kind of the world that I see that we're living in. Like, it's like men, it seems like more and more men are just gonna be addicted to this porn, and they're not, the relationships between men and women are just gonna continue to fail. There's just gonna be a lot more divorces. There's gonna be a lot more abandoned children, and just basically a lot more hatred between the man and the woman, I see. Because the men will have such high, unrealistic expectation towards the woman. And in this movie, it's also highlighting how women have unrealistic expectations towards the men when they get so into these like romantic movies, and you know, movies like Titanic, or movies like Cinderella, or movies like Little Mermaid, and all these Disney movies. You know, all these like the movies like The Notebook, like all these movies that are like basically trying to like put out a fantasy of how relationships should be, and this whole thing about like living happily ever after, and you know, expecting the man to be perfect, because basically the woman expects not the man to necessarily be physically perfect, but the woman typically expects the man to be like loyally perfected, like basically have absolutely no desire for any other woman except for them, and just basically be, have tunnel vision, like just straight on her and nobody else, and not be attracted to any other woman ever. Like, they expect the man to be like loyally and sexually committed to just them and just nobody else, and just give absolutely no attention and no love and no care for any other woman in this world. And in a way, that becomes a very unrealistic expectation that the woman has for the man, just as much as the man has the unrealistic expectation for the woman to be physically perfect. And it just becomes a struggle, because the women don't understand the dynamics of the man's sex drive, and the men, you know, don't really understand like how difficult it is to live up to these, you know, expectations to be physically perfect. And the man really has to understand like the dynamics of his own sex drive and how to basically properly channel the sexual energy so that he doesn't destroy the real relationship he has developed with a woman. And it's not easy. As far as like this pornography movie, and what the way that they're portraying like the pornography addiction in this movie, I think it's a very real problem that every single relationship goes through, and how they handle the problem. There's no like clear-cut solution to it, but I think that women to expect men to stop looking at porn altogether, I don't think it's a realistic thing. I think that men are going to be grown up through puberty watching porn, and it's just a part of them. Like, you're not going to be able to stop them from watching porn. I mean, that's just something that they've grown up to have. It becomes a part of their life, and it's not going to change. I feel that women have to learn to like allow the pornography to enhance the relationship, like allow like the pornography to increase their sexual desire towards one another. I think women need to kind of learn to enjoy the watching porn as much as, not as much, but learn to enjoy watching porn herself, so then she can enjoy that experience with her man. Learn to kind of like grow, have a little bit more like inner confidence in herself, and not be so insecure about the pornography, because it is just images. Like, the images are not going to give you like STDs. The images are not going to give you like an unwanted child. The images can be there and utilized as a way to enhance the sexual relations that you have with your partner. It could be like a way to just basically provide a certain type of variety to the sexual experience. It's like basically men are very sexually driven, and even women can essentially get sexually turned on by watching sexual images themselves. So basically what ends up happening is that, like, by nature, the animal side of humans is that they want to have sex with multiple humans, but it's not really practical, simply because of all the dynamics involved with like pregnancies and STDs, and basically emotions and attachments, and just basically this sort of like feeling that you need something for yourself, and not sharing your sex partner with another person. There's just this attachment that becomes a conflict in what our animal instincts tell us. So basically, pornography can be used as a way to kind of tap into this fantasy sexual world, but in a safe way. So meaning like, you're having sex with your partner and you're watching pornography together, you're essentially watching another couple have sex, and through watching another couple have sex, it could actually enhance the experience that you have with your partner that's right in front of you. It's just basically like this desire that we have as humans to kind of connect with other humans in a deep way, because essentially it's like this world, in a fantasy world, it could be like a whole big orgy, where it's like you have thousands of people just having sex, and they're just all in one area having sex, and just basically feeding off of each other's energies, sexual energies, by just like enjoying that experience, to the ultimate. But that's not the world we live in, but that's the fantasy world that the animal instinct desires. And pornography, in a way, brings that fantasy world and turns it into reality, or attempts to turn it into a reality where it gives you a little bit of that experience that could actually enhance your relationship as far as like the physical intimacy is concerned. I see that basically, You know, if you have sex with one woman for 10 years straight, your body, you just kind of have this drive in you to kind of want to experience a little bit something different. And pornography just kind of brings that experience to the table. And I think that women could learn to enjoy that as well. And I think if the woman learn to enjoy it with the man, it could really help the relationship become much stronger, rather than denying it and trying to force the man to eliminate that from his life. I don't think that's going to be the solution. I don't think that will ever work, because the man, you could only hold his attention sexually for so long. It might be for a year, it might be for 2 years, it might be for 3 years, but eventually he's going to break and he's going to want to turn towards pornography. But you'd rather have the man turn towards pornography than to turn towards a actual, human being that puts a major threat to the primary relationship. Like basically what happened with Tiger Woods, having a wife and a kid and everything, and then now he's sleeping with all these different women, like over 12 different women he was sleeping with. That is basically not a good, solution. You'd rather have Tiger Woods basically be into pornography and then share that pornography with his wife and learn to enjoy that pornography together to strengthen the sexual relations between the couple. I see that this is the world we live in. Trying to stop pornography is like trying to stop the internet. It's not going to stop the internet. It's here. But if for some reason the government shut down the entire internet, then that will resolve a lot of the conflict with pornography. Then the men wouldn't even have access to it. And then it will severely limit their exposure to it. And then it will change and recondition their minds into something more realistic. But as long as the internet is here, the men will always be guided towards this pornography, and they're going to be conditioned towards this pornography and having these type of sexual urges towards towards the perfection of a woman's body, and towards basically experiencing this type of physical, lustful intimacy with various different women, and through various different images. But I think that if a woman learns to accept this aspect of how this world is, and accept this aspect of a man, and essentially just let him basically have like a pornography buffet, just basically let him go all out with the pornography, he eventually will come to the point where he will just satisfy his appetite naturally, and he's not going to be so much addicted to it anymore. It's like going to a buffet and you eat so much food that you don't want to eat anymore. So a man that watches so much pornography, he's eventually gonna not want to watch it that much anymore, and then the problem pretty much resolves itself. But if you try to stop the man from watching pornography, and you make it seem like you make him feel guilty for watching it, and you're basically forcing him to hide it from you, and then the addiction could grow to become even stronger, to the point where he'd rather he's finding more pleasure with the addiction than he is with the actual relationship, and that becomes a problem, because the pornography is not creating it's not, these women in the videos are not arguing with him, they're not nagging him, they're not creating all these problems with him. He could essentially be drawn more to the pornography than the actual woman, and that becomes the problem. So the women basically have to learn to accept that this world is the way that it is, and basically try to find some joy within the pornography themselves, so they can share this experience with the man, and that should strengthen the relationship. But it also boils down to what the movie was also indicating, which is basically being in the moment when you're having sex. Is because no matter how much beauty you see in pornography, the beauties of real sex cannot be replaced with pornography. Just basically being in the moment. Like pornography cannot give you the feeling of how it's like to kiss a real woman. The pornography cannot give you the feeling of how it feels like to actually be in love with the real woman. The pornography cannot give you the experience of how it is to actually like hug and caress a real woman. Pornography cannot give you the experience of how it is to have a woman massage your entire body, or cannot. Pornography cannot give you the experience of you having the ability to massage a woman, and her entire body. Pornography cannot give you the experience of like oral sex or real sex, or just basically the real connection with the woman, the physical connection as far as like physically touching each other. Pornography cannot give you that. Pornography cannot give you the smell of a woman. The touching and the smelling, and even the real visual of somebody right in front of your face, opposed to just staring into a computer screen. So pornography is not perfect in itself. A real woman cannot be replaced. And no matter how much pornography a man watches, there's always going to be that desire to connect with a real woman. So we want that realness. But at the same time, the man's desire, the animal desires, also strive towards lustfulness. We want something real, but then we also want like to live in a fantasy as well. And pornography in a way is kind of like trying to bring that fantasy into our real lives, but in a safer manner, opposed to just basically engaging into like a swinging lifestyle or just going to sleep with a bunch of different women. It's not a safe method, because you're putting a lot at risk as far as STDs are concerned, and unwanted pregnancies, and just basically damaging people's emotions like on the way towards trying to fulfill this type of animalistic lust. You could be destroying the emotions of the person that you're using for sex, and then you could be destroying the emotions of the person that is supposed to be your life partner. So I don't see that sleeping with a bunch of different women is the answer. Like what happened with Tiger Woods, I don't see that to be the answer. Men have to learn to find love with a woman and find their life partner. And once they find their life partner, I see that utilizing pornography together as a couple is the primary solution to this very complex world that we live in. I don't see that the solution to force a man to stop watching pornography, I don't see that to be a solution. I don't believe that's a good solution. I think eventually that will break down. That solution will not work. I think the only solution is for the woman to accept the pornography and to basically learn to enjoy this pornography with her life partner. That's essentially what I see to be the solution. And for the men that basically have a hard time finding real women, they have to realize that if they really do want a real woman, they need to try to decondition themselves into having these high, unrealistic expectations for women as far as their physical beauty is concerned. These men have to, they have to get a reality check and realize that, not all women out there are going to be looking like these people in porn. They have to engage in more real communication with women and real relationships with women, and not get too sucked into this fantasy porn dreamland that's not a reality. That's if they want to connect with the real woman. But if they don't want to connect with the real woman, then they could essentially live their lives watching porn, their entire lives, and just using a masturbation device. But if that's what they want to do, that's what they want to do. But if they want to connect with the real woman, they're going to have to basically learn to decondition themselves and basically learn to connect with human beings on a human level, and not just treat women as sex objects, but to basically value a woman for the friendship that she could provide, and the communication that she could provide, and not just think in terms of sex, you know. And essentially, you know, they find a real woman. The porn could come and enhance the relationship, you know, later on. But I think that the primary objective for men that really want to meet a real woman, they essentially have to, in a way, you know, not get too sucked into this fantasy world. You know, they need to kind of put more effort to try to communicate with somebody that's real. You know, but it's a tough thing to deal with in the society, and I see that, you know, it's a struggle for every single relationship out there, every single one. You know, because every single woman will start off being very, very insecure with the porn, unless they are like psychologically prepared to deal with that. You know, where they pretty much expect it, and then they learn to deal with it and cope with it. Just like, and kind of try to follow the guidelines that I specified, where they learn to accept it, deal with it, and try to you know, allow it to enhance the relationship rather than denying it, and then you know essentially sabotaging the relationship because of that denial. You know, I mean, the fact of the matter is, you know, this is the world that we live in. We live in a world where there's internet access, and with that internet access allows unlimited access to pornography, and pretty much every single man in this world, you know, has pornography a part of their lives. No matter how hard the woman tried to stop this, it will not stop. You know, but the woman could find a way to develop happiness within their relationships through understanding, you know, how pornography could actually be used as a tool to enhance their connection with their partner.